Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out this morning. My name is Tim Anderson. I am the programming manager here at Enzion Theater and the Florida Film Festival. Oh, thank you. And welcome to our incredible panel on hand-drawn independent animation. This year marks the 34th anniversary of the Florida Film Festival and the 40th anniversary of our home theater, Enzion, celebrating 40 years of bringing independent cinema and art house projects to Central Florida. We're very proud to get to do this. As a nonprofit community arts institution, we are supported by members and ticket goers and patrons and people who go to the bar and grab food, but also we're very, very supported by our donors. And so during this April, we are celebrating 40 years of Enzion, and we are working towards raising $40,000 to help offset losses from cultural arts institution grants that have been dried up during the last couple of years. So we would appreciate your support, continued as well. We're going to get this panel started. It's an absolutely incredible group of animators that are going to be on the stage here as well. We'll start with a couple of clips from their films, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you all again for being here this morning to join us, and thank you very much to our animators for being up here. My name is Steven Stull. I'm on the Narrative Shorts Selection Committee, which also selects the animated program for the festival. And I would like everybody to introduce themselves, but just real fast, I'm a lifelong lover of animation, but when I was younger, I never really appreciated the level of labor that it really takes to create something like this. So would you please introduce yourself, and as you do, just throw out the time period that producing your animation took, please, just to give people an idea who, like me, didn't know how long this takes, just to give them an idea about all this.
I'm Vander Meer. I made Hunky Dory, and I work alone, and I work full-time on my films, and it took me 2 years.
And I'm sorry, how long is Hunky Dory?
6 minutes long.
6 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Amanda Bonaiuto. I made Confetti. It's 4 minutes long. I also work alone, and this took me about 9 months to make.
I'm Nick Burch. I'm actually the producer on Snow Bear, and I worked with Aaron on it, who did all the visuals on the screen. The idea for the story we came up with 9 years ago, but actual production time was 2.5 to 3 years. And,
2.5,
yeah, and it's 11 minutes, 11 and a half minutes long. And Aaron can tell you how many drawings he did.
I did a lot. But I'm Aaron Blaise, and yeah, I worked on Snow Bear for, I did all of it as well by myself, and worked for 2.5 years. And yeah, it was a lot of drawings. I don't know.
12,000 plus, for sure.
Wow. All right, so let's start. I'm going to start with some some kind of technical questions from like a total noob standpoint who's never done any kind of animation. Is everybody here? I know the answer for some of you. Drawing on paper.
No,
Okay.
I drew digitally.
You drew digitally.
Yeah, I'm the only one here that
did it.
cheated. Yeah.
Yeah. No. We're gonna have to kick him off the panel,
TV
Tim. Get rid of him.
I worked with TV Paint software.
Oh, okay.
So it's all hand drawn,
It's like
but
on a
I
tablet.
worked on a pen display.
Okay. Okay. Cool.
Wacom. Yep.
And Stephen, I've already asked you about this 2 times because I find it so fascinating. But please let everybody know where you are making your drawings.
So I draw on 3x5-inch index cards like these right here. And in fact, this is a little stack of drawings from my film. And if you see me out in the lobby, I can flip this little flip book for you.
This is fascinating to me. I
There-
love this. Try to catch Stephen and look at this.
There are exactly 4,320 of these drawings.
Wow.
And Amanda, what about you? What are you drawing on?
Yeah, so I love TV Paint. It's my
Yes, I
favorite.
do
If
too.
I'm going to work in a software, it's my favorite software. And I feel like now I recognize your face. Do you do TV Paint software demos?
Tutorials, yep, I do.
Yep.
Yep.
I learned from
I
you.
love those guys. Oh, thanks.
Subscribe
See,
to
it works,
Aaron's
it works.
channel.
It works.
The squeaky
Um,
wheel.
Yeah, I love working on paper, and for this film, I mean, like a part of the reason why I love working on paper is just the accessibility of it. So I was just working with like regular old cheap computer paper, and I got a peg bar that's just like a 3-hole peg punch, so it works with any sort of standard 3-hole punch, versus the Acme one, which is a little bit more expensive, a lot more expensive. So yeah, just normal paper.
Is the
Baffled how expensive that
sorry.
Acme punch is. I'm like,
It's like thousands of dollars.
yeah, you're like, what?
Yeah.
and is the purpose of it, again, total noob here, to hold the paper in place so that you can keep it matched from frame to frame?
Yeah, it's just
Okay.
for registration. So like if you're working on a light box, you just sort of tape this little bar to the bottom, and that's where you are registering your frames. I don't know if you're using any registration system or if it's just.
To register index cards, you put one on top of the other.
There you go.
It's very high tech, very high tech. And so what about, so again, Stephen and Amanda working on the physical paper, how do you get this into your editing software?
It's real simple. I use a flatbed scanner, and
Okay.
it's just a normal one. So, and index cards just happen to be almost the exact same ratio as HD. So I scan them at a rate that puts out a 1920 by 1080 TIFF file.
Oh, wow, okay.
I do different things. Sometimes I use a scanner, but I also have like a down shooter set up. Like I don't know if anyone is familiar with down shooters.
I've got one as well.
Yeah, I built it a couple years ago, and I just have like a really cheap Canon T3i camera that I've had for like 10 years, and I'll use Dragon Frame software and just capture frames that way. If
We
I
use Dragon Frame as well.
I love Dragon Frame.
We just
It's the
got all the
best.
same software. Yeah.
But it depends. Like there's something nice about photographing because there is this sort of chance of error, which I really like. Especially if you're not lighting everything perfectly, you might actually have like artifacting or like strange things that happen in the photography, which I kind of like to play with that. Also, if I'm photographing, sometimes I'll actually like zoom in on my compositions just to see them differently and see if I can find something that is more interesting to me. But it depends. For this film, I scanned, but that
You
was because I was at an artist residency and I didn't have access to my down
rig,
shooter,
yeah.
to my rig.
Okay. Well, speaking of, you were talking about errors, and I think, those little, and you call them errors. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure that's the exact right word, but it adds a lot of like organicness to your movie. Or that's a word, though, right? I promise. And so, but it makes me wonder for all of you, on a traditional live-action film set, getting a second take is logistically pretty easy, especially now in the age of digital. But there's a lot of labor involved in redoing a shot or redoing a scene or something like that for an animation. So how does that affect your decision about whether how do you gauge, okay, this is working, how much of this do I need to redo if it's not working? What's your thought process on like redoing pieces that you've already gone through all the work of creating? And we can just go down, or we start down there with Aaron.
Okay.
We'll come back this way.
Well, first of all, I storyboard before I start doing any animation. So if I come up with a story, I usually storyboard the whole thing 3 times before I decide to move forward. And then I'll show it to friends. I'll show it to Nick. I'll show it to my wife, Vedanta. We'll show it to people that we trust to really give us honest feedback. Is this reading? Is this story point coming through clearly? All of that. So I try to get all that working before I ever move forward. Outside of story, I also storyboard, and a lot of people think this is the way we do it anyway, but a lot of studios don't do it this way. I storyboard making sure that I'm figuring out my layout, my setup, everything the way I want it to look on the screen. Traditionally, because I come from a big studio, I come from Disney. I was at Disney for 21 years. And you get someone to come in and storyboard a project, you storyboard a sequence, and very often those boards would be approved from a story standpoint, but then they would go to layout, and the whole layout would be refigured and reconceived and all that kind of thing. And I don't want to do that, so I sit down and try to do it all at once. So I'm figuring out layout, story, all of that, all in the storyboards. Once I like it, then I sit down and I animate it. So all of that is adding up to, I rarely have to go back and redo any animation because I've got lots and lots of checks and balances in place, so I don't have to do that.
Right. I want to pause you for a second before we move down the line. Speaking of those storyboards, you said you storyboard at least 3 times. Is the granularity of the boards you make increasing each time? Like, are you making more storyboards for the second iteration and then the third iteration? Or is
No,
it
it's
still
really all about
inflection?
just story content.
Okay.
So I might have something in my head that plays perfectly well in my head, and I play it for someone else, and they go, I'm not getting that at all. And so I have to kind of step out of myself and reevaluate what it is I'm trying to get across and reconceive it, and then I'll reboard it.
Oftentimes it's like take a shot out, add a shot in, or reframe it because you're working out that composition type stuff in the board forms.
The ending of Snow Bear, we redid and redid over and over again for probably a period of about a year before we settled on what we wanted to do. And that's Nick and I discussing back and forth.
And that's still in the storyboarding phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please.
How are your boards like really clean, or are they more like thumbnail boards, or?
Well, I'll thumbnail them first, and then I'll go through and do them clean. And oftentimes I'll do it in the same palette. And that's only because I'm making my own film, but I'll do them in the same palette, everything that I want the finished look to be. Yeah, generally. Yeah, just so I don't have to do more work down the line.
Same question to Amanda.
Yeah, I think this changes for me with every project. We were talking about this. Sometimes you storyboard, sometimes you just like literally don't storyboard. With this film, I made like a little thumbnail pass, but I wanted it to stay flexible throughout the production. So I knew that I had some really strong images in my head that I felt confident about. So I just started animating those, which is, if I were in a studio setting or if I were working with other people, that would be highly risky, because the potential for needing to redo would be high. But because it's an independent production and because I felt really good about those shots, I just kind of went for it, and then I would let those shots inform the shots around it. So if I needed to adjust anything after making a shot that I felt really good about, fully animated, I would then reapproach my thumbnail boards and make any changes. So this film, this was also the first personal film I had made in like maybe 5 years, because I had been doing so much commission work. And I was like, I just want to feel so free to do whatever I want. And so I let it be flexible like that up until the very end of the production, which, that worked for me because of what this project was. That would not have worked for another project if it were more client-based or if I were working collaboratively. So it totally depends on, how you're working and who you're working with.
So my storyboard is, I storyboarded out Hunky Dory from start to finish at the beginning of the project, but very differently than Aaron. My storyboard is extremely rough, highly organized, but very rough. They're just little index cards with scribbles on them to get the basic idea out of my head and onto paper. And then as I go along animating, that's when I figure out what the final look is going to be, and then it allows me to improvise, like Amanda is talking about. So as far as like redoing sections, it rarely happens with me because I like including mistakes. I think that's part of the learning process and part of what an experimental film is making mistakes and having them be part of the film. Unless it's something I really can't live with, then it's just then I might throw a stack of index cards into the recycling bin and start over, but that almost never happens.
So speaking of the style, like you were talking about deciding on the style of the art that you wanted to use, after you, and again, this is a question for everybody, after you kind of conceptualize the framework of the movie you're trying to make, you know, there's a lot of choices to be made, and it all kind of happens inside your heads. How do you, what's your process for deciding how the artwork should look, right? Like if your style varies from project to project, how do you decide from the moment, like what, do you have a general kind of, a general kind of process for deciding, okay, here's my idea, how do I get from this idea to what it looks like? Or does what it looks like always start at the beginning? Yeah, please, yeah, go ahead.
That's probably the hardest part, is getting what's in my head onto paper and then deciding how it's going to finally look. And it often changes. Just I start drawing and I see what it looks like, and I just keep drawing and keep redoing and erasing and finessing it until it looks like I want it to. But my style doesn't change that much from film to film. I just kind of, it evolves over time.
Yeah, I think it depends on the project again, but I think with this one, the way that I was sort of like writing the film, I never wrote a script or anything, but I think the way I was trying to come up with the film was through drawing. So I was just drawing, huge stacks of drawings everywhere, and the style just kind of came out of that. I didn't do much, you know, I wasn't really thinking like, how do I want this to look? I was kind of like, this seems to be how it looks. This is how it's going to look. So, and then I had this huge fight with myself about like color, like was I going to color the film or not color the film? And every time I tried to color it, I was bringing my hand-drawn frames into TV Paint, and I was trying to color that way. I would get like really nauseous looking at the color, and I was like, I just don't think I can color this film. Like I like the lines, and there was so much artifact on the frames from the scanning process. I was like, I kind of like how like dirty it looks. Yeah. And I was like, maybe that kind of carries it and makes it a finished image. So I just let it be.
That's cool. I'm sorry. I'm gonna get to Nick and Aaron in just a second, but I wanna piggyback on what you just said right there. I love that look of your movie. It feels the word that comes to mind for me is tactile. Like I can almost feel it looking at the screen. Just a quick. You mentioned color. Quick side question. If you were drawing on printer paper, why is the paper that color? On the, because it's like a it's not like
it's
white.
Yellowish.
It's not like yeah. Is that just a scanning artifact or something? Or
I think, I mean, it must just be from I have like a really crappy scanner. And also, most of the time I photograph. So like when I was scanning, I was like, I guess I should be like cleaning the scanner or like taking care of the scanner. No, I just like kept photographing.
Trust yourself, because it looks great. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's got this nice warmth to it.
As far as the visuals go, I'll definitely defer to Aaron on this, but I do know from the very beginning, you know, we wanted to shoot for something that felt like a Disney caliber film. So we wanted it to feel, but at the same time, we also were really adamant we wanted it to feel hand drawn too. We that's why we didn't clean it up. So we wanted line crawl and all that stuff. And Aaron can talk to the visual.
Yeah, as far as the style goes, it's just the natural style that I just fall into. So I didn't really push myself to try anything outside my wheelhouse. That being said, I have 21 years at Disney, so I kind of fall into this kind of traditional character design my first love has always been animal drawing. When I went to college with the intent of not being an animator. I wanted to be an illustrator for National Geographic. That was my big dream.
Yeah.
And so I've always been an animal artist, and so I brought that with me into Disney, so I was able to do characters like Nala and Raja from Aladdin. Yeah. And so that style just kind of grew within me, and so by the time I left Disney, that's what you see on the screen is what came out of that. So So I just, I tend to fall into this naturalist, caricatured realism, I guess you could call it. And so that's what that was.
I mean, it's, it works for a reason, right? Like they've kept it the style for a reason. But I love like Nick, you and Aaron were talking about the drawing lines on there. It gives such a like it's already, your drawing is already incredibly expressive. But
yes. Well, one of the things I want to add to that is that I was very adamant about, and I love CG animating, CG films, but I also want, if I was going to make a hand-drawn film, which is my first love, I wanted it to feel hand-drawn. I wanted it to feel, I want you to see the mistakes in the crawl and things like that. And I love I love when we're making films, in the process, especially when I was at Disney, there was something so magical about seeing those first rough scenes coming out before they'd get cleaned up. With animators like Mark Henn and Glenn Keane and Andrea Stasia that would create these really beautiful things. And sometimes these shots, and sometimes they would lose that spark when they'd get cleaned up. And so, and it becomes really mechanical. And so I wanted, I went in and I was pretty clean with my roughs, but I wasn't worrying about fur, vibrating and things like that, because I wanted it to feel hand-drawn.
No, I love it. Just my wife and I, we go to Disney all the time. We love walking through like the history areas and stuff where there's always these original sketches and things like that on the walls, because it just looks so, I don't know, it looks alive in a way that like the polished finished project doesn't exactly look. But, I have some more questions, but I want to point out in about 10, 15-ish minutes, I'm going to start asking you guys if you have any questions. Pete has set up a microphone over here by the door. He's the guy in the teal cap waving at you right now. So, like I said, in about 10-ish minutes, if you have a question, please line up there, and I'll start throwing it out there. Right? In the meantime, Aaron, you just mentioned something I wanted to talk about. You said that you went into school intending to be an illustrator. What is everybody's foundation in drawn art? And we'll start at your end, since you.
Well, I grew up in South Florida, and in a little trailer out in the Everglades, and I was running around barefoot, chasing animals, and it's always been my lifelong joy, is just being out in nature and doing that. So, I grew up wanting to, people like, I don't know if any of you guys will know who these artists, but Robert Bateman, Guy Koliak, a lot of these really big animal artists of the 80s that did these beautiful prints and illustrations as well, and they put out books. And I also had these dreams of traveling the world. I lived in this little trailer, like I said, and I never thought I'd get out of Naples, Florida is where I lived. And, but I kept all these stacks of National Geographic magazines under my bed, and I would read them at night, and I just loved the illustrations and everything. So when I went to school, I thought, man, that would be cool to be able to work for National Geographic. But I had to work my way through school, freelancing every job I could get, and I wanted to be on staff somewhere, and National Geographic didn't have staff illustrators. They freelanced everything. I was like, So I had this opportunity. I had two companies that I was going to interview with. It was Disney, they're coming to interview interns, and Hallmark Cards. And Disney was first. So I interviewed with Disney and fell into animation.
And then your destiny was made that day, I guess.
And for me, I went to the Ringling College of Art and Design in Sarasota. Actually, Aaron went there as well. And my dream was to do hand-drawn animation. Things had kind of shifted by the time I was in school. I was right in that. It was post-Toy Story, so things had started to shift into CG. We still had hand-drawn animation classes, but a big part of the reason that program even exists is because of this guy getting hired out of there. And now it's one of the premier animation schools in the world, and it's a great program. But yeah, my love was always hand-drawn, and that's what I wanted to do. And they just kind of, Aaron always says, they kind of just took it off the menu, And so, it's like you go to a restaurant and they don't have your favorite dish anymore. So, we're hoping that it starts to come back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep it alive. He always says it won't die if we don't let it die,
I think all of you up here are doing the hard work of keeping it alive, and we appreciate that, certainly here at Florida.
I went to school initially for fine art, which was like a very scary move. No one in my family is an artist or had any sort of art background, so they're like, what? How are you going to support yourself? What are you talking about? But it was this really interdisciplinary school. There were no grades.
It's like a rainbow or a smiley face.
Yeah, it was like pass, fail, and there were no majors. And so I was like welding, doing ceramics, making paintings, and then I took an animation 1 class, and it was surprising. Like I was learning about animators that I had never heard about, and mostly experimental animators like Caroline Leaf, who's started doing sand animation, and just these like amazing animators who I was like, this almost feels like fine art. Like it feels like we're not talking about cartoons necessarily, even though I love cartoons, but this was where my sort of like love for animation started. And then I started making animation and weirdly was like getting work doing that. And I was certainly not getting work making paintings. So I just kind of went in that direction. And then I ended up going to CalArts for grad school once I was like, whoa, yeah, animation is cool.
As a kid, I did a lot of drawing, as kids do. But as I grew older, unlike the other kids, I kept drawing. And it was a small town in Iowa, and I decided to go to the Minneapolis College of Art and Design. And back then, they only had 2 majors, fine art and design. And I started out in fine art, painting, drawing, that kind of thing. Switched over to design, graphic design, illustration, that kind of thing. But then I got into photography, and that was mostly what I studied in college. Later in my college career, they added a 3rd major, which was media arts, and so I switched to that because that's where the photography was. And as a part of that major, I had to take some film classes, which I hadn't thought of. I just had to. It was a requirement. So I took film classes, Super 8, 16 millimeter, and one of the teachers gave us an assignment. They said, do a 30-second animation. Teacher was not an animator, didn't teach animation, just said, buy some computer paper, cheap computer paper.
Figure it out.
And figure it out and do it. And so I did. And she also mentioned that there was this animator somewhere, I forget the name or where he was, but he made an animation on index cards. And I thought, oh, that's cool. And it kind of just stuck in my head. So I didn't do that in college, but a year after college, I decided to make my first film on index cards. That was 1986. And I'm still doing it.
Yeah, still do. I mean, if it ain't broke, right?
Yeah.
I want to talk about music for a minute because like you all have dialogue-free movies, and the art, of course, is carrying the movie. But when there's no, I mean, not even just when there's no dialogue, even when there's dialogue, the music is incredibly important. So how do you? I just feel like it's even more important when nobody's saying anything. How do you? How do you choose the music? What is your music process, and what is your process for getting the music involved in your movie? And I want to start with you, Stephen, because I kind of know a little bit of the background.
Okay. Well, it depends on the project, like Amanda says. There's 3 ways to do a music film. You can, like, before I've drawn entire animations start to finish in complete silence, and then added music by either licensing music and adding it, or hiring local musicians to write original music and put it on there. That's one way. Another way is to start with a finished song and animate to it, which is really fun. That's what I did with Hunky Dory. You can match the drawings up to the existing music, and that's why it's in perfect sync. And then the third way, which I haven't done yet, but I've talked to other animators even here that have done it, which is to collaborate with the musician from the very beginning.
From the beginning, okay.
And create it side by side, and I'm going to do that someday. But for Hunky Dory, I wanted to make a film where I animated to music because I had done it once before, and I wanted to do it again because it's really fun. So I was kind of shopping around looking for music, and I found the song Hunky Dory by Bela Fleck, and I loved it. So I went about the process of getting in touch with him and getting his permission to use it. And he happened to like my work and gave me that permission for free. And so that's how it started.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Animating to music is like one of the greatest pleasures of life.
Oh,
It's just really a wonderful experience. Yeah, I've made a lot of music videos, so this is or music films. I'm going to use this new term because I think it's great, and it's always interesting to be like sort of the creative director in collaboration with a song. But for Confetti, so the way that I approach the sound, and interesting, like this film doesn't have music per se, but it's
your
extremely
sound design,
rhythmic.
I wanted to ask you about it because it's incredible. It's again very tactile again, like
and it's yeah, it has a rhythm to it. So what the process for this was, I actually find it very hard to make animation without sound. So I'll always make sort of like a draft of sound to just play back in my animatic. So even if it's just like atmosphere, some sort of soundscape that like helps me understand a room or a space or like a feeling, like some sort of psychological experience, I start there. And then for Confetti, I actually hired a sound designer, which I don't normally do. Basil, incredible sound designer, like big, huge shout out. So Basil basically took my draft and made it way better and sort of like re-recorded a lot of the sounds, and it just added like a whole nother dimension to the film. And then we sat down together and did the mix, which was also really fun because a lot of creative stuff happens during those mixes, and it felt so collaborative, and it was just a really, really awesome experience. So yeah, working with a sound designer, my new favorite thing.
Hey, I'm sorry. I want to pause real fast. You said there were a lot of things came out of doing the edit. Do you mean in the picture as well? Like, were you redoing bits of the image at that time, or was this just like
just the sound?
Like
so,
edits? Okay.
But it's like shocking. I mean, sound is like 50% of the film.
For sure,
so it's like shocking what happens when you make this like small change, and all of a sudden you see something much more clearly, or something else is sort of more pronounced that otherwise was kind of getting lost. So a lot of that was going on during that mix session, and we were both like, whoa, like just like making these little changes and feeling so excited about the results.
That's awesome.
I'm going to mostly, again, let Aaron talk about the music process, but we identified very early on that with a film with no dialogue, to convey emotion, the music is huge.
Absolutely,
so and the sound effects is huge, and so we were like, okay, we're going to have to really focus on that. And so we went into life savings, took out loans, did the whole thing to try to get what we got. And I'll let Aaron talk about that process in more detail.
Yeah, so I had the luck of having the career that I had with Disney, so I was able to brush elbows with some good people. And so when I did Brother Bear, I directed Brother Bear, and I was able to work with Phil Collins and Tina Turner, and Mark Mancina was our composer, and we really struck up a really good relationship. And by the end of that, I really loved the score on Brother Bear. He also composed the score for Tarzan and Moana, and he just finished Mufasa and Moana 2, and he does a lot of live action. And so, when we finished, actually, let me step back a little bit. My process for getting the score is, as I'm making the film, once I have it all storyboarded, I'll go through my library of all my favorite scores that fit the tone of what I'm trying to do, and I'll cut music to the rhythm. I'm getting there splicing music and all kinds of stuff, which I love doing. Because like you said, it just elevates everything. And so I'll get in there and, from 50 different scores, I'll Frankenstein something together that has the tone of what I intend for it to be. And so then, so that's how I did that. And then just from a sound effects standpoint, we also hired a sound designer and Foley artists. And I worked with a guy named John Roche, who did this, the Foley work for Back to the Future and E.T. and all this stuff. And once again, he had retired. But once again, we thought, all right, let's just go to the top and we'll work down. But once again, we were lucky enough that when I talked to John, he's like, yeah, let's figure it out. And so he came on and worked with us. And so it was the same thing with Mark Mancina. I hadn't talked to Mark in 20 years, but I wrote him an email and I sent him a link to the boards, to the film. And he called me back within like 30 minutes and said, I love it. Let's figure it out. So, and so that's what was great, was that I was able to play that score for him. Some of it had like Hans Zimmer stuff in there, and you're like, great, you set the bar a little high, didn't you? But he likes that because he understands kind of the intent, and he can go off and pull something together that's his or ours, and then but it fits the tone. I don't have to explain it; I can show it. And so it works out really, really great that way. And then, like Nick said, when I talked to Mark, I said, look, when I was working for Disney, I wasn't handling the contracts, so I don't know what you charge. I don't know what it's going to take. And he goes, you know what? I never handled the contracts either. Let's figure it out. And so at the end of the day, yeah, we had to take out a couple of loans, but we got it done. So, and I'm super happy with the film,
Yeah,
or with the
absolutely.
music.
I just want to say one of my favorite parts of this whole experience was we had players from the San Francisco orchestras, because it's a real orchestra, players, violins, cellos. It's not synthesizer stuff. So he gave us the score that they did on synthesizers first. Mark and his Marlon Espino is his co-composer on the project. They sent us a synthesizer score. We absolutely loved it. And he's like, I think it's going to be way better with a real orchestra. So I got to fly out there, and he had never done this. He was like, we were going to rent a studio or do this or do that. He's like, you know what? We know this is an independent film, and we know you're tight on budget. We'll just do it in my studio. So he had 10 celloists up in his kitchen, and then 10 violinists down in the living room, and it was all mic'd up, and I was running around shooting video. It was such a cool experience.
That's
really
awesome. You have I don't know, you have this BTS video or something?
Yeah. If you go to we just posted some the other day on snowbearshort.com. We just launched that, and there's some there.
That sounds fantastic. I have one more a question specifically about Snow Bear. I have. This is a movie with an environmental message, and I have a lot of affection for polar bears. And I asked you this last night, if there's anyone who wants to help the plight of the polar bears, where would you direct them?
PolarBearsInternational.org.
Polar Bears International.
They're an amazing group. They're the premier research, and it's not just about the bears. It's also about the sea ice. The bears need the sea ice to live. People don't know this. They're considered a marine mammal, like a dolphin or something like that. And
matter of fact, we just got an email from them this morning because we're trying to plan a trip for me to go up to Churchill, Manitoba, on the coast of Hudson Bay, to go up and draw polar bears in the wild and promote a whole bunch of stuff up there. So it's going to be cool.
The hope is Snow Bear helps shed some light to the work
sure.
they're doing, for sure.
Excellent. I have one more question I'm going to ask all of you guys, but then we're gonna go out to audience questions. So I'm going to ask these guys one more question, and then if you have something, please come on up to the mic. We'd love to hear it. We probably. So several of you have mentioned specific names so far in specific animators. Is there someone who most of us probably have never heard of, who we should be paying attention to in the world of animation? Everybody just pick somebody you think you would love for us to go out and Google and find their stuff.
Stacey Steers.
Stacey Steers. Oh, Indy steal yours.
No, I love Stacey Steers. She's great. I was going to say Rahman Jafari.
Is someone writing these down? Tim? Matthew, you're writing these down. Anyway, sorry.
But also Kelly Gallagher.
Okay.
These are not unknown names, but I love everything they do, and I can't wait to see what they do next. Sergio Pablos, who did Klaus on Netflix, he's working on a cool little movie. He's working on a movie called Ember, and look for that when it comes out. And then Tom Moore with the Cartoon Saloon, who did Song of the Sea, and those guys are just awesome filmmakers. And
credited in the film as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot. The people that I look up to that raised me in the world of animation. A lot of people already know Glenn Keane and Mark Henn and Andreas Deja. Glenn, for those of you that don't know, he created Ariel from The Little Mermaid and Tarzan and The Beast and all these wonderful characters, and he trained me. And he's an incredibly giving individual, but he's just one of the best artists I've ever met in my life. But there's also, Sandro Cluzo, which is he's an amazing artist, and James Baxter, which a lot of people also know, but I really look up to James. All of these are really strong character-driven, animators that I just think are amazing.
Awesome. Oh yes, please.
One more. Sorry, I know you just said one.
No. Well, Aaron took like 40, so it's okay.
Signe Bauman. I don't know if anybody's familiar with her work. She's
Say it
making
again?
Signe Bauman.
Okay.
She's like Latvian animator. She lives in New York, and she's making a new feature right now. And I think she's sort of crowdfunding a bit. So if anyone wants to check her out, she's amazing, totally amazing. Signe Bauman.
Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, and it looks like we do have at least one audience question. Please come on up to the mic.
Hi, my name's Lisa, and I just wanted to thank you all for being here.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm one of the press people, and I have to confess I know nothing about animation. It's not in my background. but all of yours were so different from each other, and I totally appreciated all the work that went into it. They were just different aspects, and I just, like I said, I know nothing about it. My question is specifically for the snow bear people. The snow bear people. First, I wish I had been paired with the paper bear because it was pretty much the same audience, but that's just me. My question is, and I appreciated so much the fact that the story went through the credits, and I was wondering how you made that decision rather than putting it within the story so you knew what happened to the bear.
Well, that was Nick's idea. That we always knew we wanted to have some credits in there, and Nick thought it would be great to have the story continue. And you know, the story that's on screen was always the story. But then we thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to set up a little continuation of that story? And maybe we might do something again later on. So.
Yeah, we've got some ideas there. There might be a feature we're working on. So we'll see if we get any, you know. Keep supporting 2D and drawn animation is the gist of it.
And I just want to say, as a programmer, I love anything that punishes people for leaving during the credits. So good,
that was the other reason we wanted to do it. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Gabe, and I want first of all to thank you all for coming here to the Florida Film Festival. And my question is, when it comes to independent productions, how do you decide when to bring aboard additional help? Because it can sometimes be very tempting to stick something out and do it yourself, but then again, it can always, you know, become a great burden and nothing gets done.
Good question. Yeah. I don't have an answer. That's why you guys are here. So, no.
I can take it.
Yes, please.
I think it's a great question, and I think it totally depends on resources and also just your sort of connections, like who you know, who can sort of help you out. In this film, because I knew it was going to be such a short film, I was like, I'm just going to do it myself. But previous works, I think the last like 3 or 4 projects I've worked on, which were either, you know, more commissioned or collaborative with a studio, I've hired help to help me. And so it just really has depended on budget and the ability to pay people. My least favorite thing on earth is to not be able to pay people for their labor, especially with just ever, but in animation for sure. So if I cannot pay someone, it's hard for me to make that ask. But if there's budget, I think it's always good to have extra hands. And also, I teach, so if I have like recent graduates, I like to give them opportunities to help on projects. Not for lower pay, for like good pay. So budget is key.
When in relation to that, you brought Basil on to help with this, or to help with the sound design. Was that always your intention with this project, or did you decide while you were working on it?
I decided while I was working on it, and I had a small budget for this film, and I used all of it on the sound design. Yeah. But it was very small. I mean, Basil also had sent out a message basically expressing like, hey everybody, hey world, I want to work on more short films, things that are less commercial. I want the opportunity, and please reach out if you have anything. And I was like, I have $1,000. Is that enough? And luckily, they were wonderful.
God bless them for like wanting to, because that's incredible sound design, and for wanting to work on short projects. Just that's an MVP right there. Does anyone else have a contribution to the question?
Definitely for us, it was a matter of budget. In this particular film, though, Aaron always wanted to, coming from Disney, where the crew could be as high as 350 people. He always wanted to do something himself, so that was always with this going to be the case.
Ego. I identify with that.
But going forward, I mean, it's you know, we would never attempt to do a feature as us personally as one person. Although there are people out there that do it, it's amazing.
Outside of creating the film, we've got a business that he and I started 13 years ago called creatureartteacher.com, and it's an online art education business. So it took us 10 years to build the business to the point where it could provide the income that I could go away and make the film.
Awesome. Stephen, do you generally? I mean, I think you generally are a solo act, right?
Yeah, completely solo. In fact, if you sent me a free intern that I didn't have to pay, I wouldn't know what to do with them because I'm kind of a control freak and I'm like not letting anybody touch my drawings. I want to do them all myself because that's the fun part. I will hire musicians and sound people.
Yeah.
So that's the only time.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sam, and thank you for being here. I have sort of a broad strokes question, which is that I feel like to animate, you need to have a very kind of deep and robust comfort zone, but it's also very vulnerable to pour that much of yourself into something. Is there any part of your process in this last project or overall from conception to screening that brings you out of your comfort zone still, that maybe makes you more nervous, feels less intuitive?
Amanda, you got something? It sounds like you have thoughts.
Yeah, just like the entire process. Every time my film screens, I still am like nearing a nervous breakdown. So I think it is so vulnerable to make stuff. I think even just getting to the point where like I have an idea to make something and then like making the choice to do it is pretty vulnerable. I think there's also just like always, like I've noticed, I guess after this amount of time, you know, I've been making animation for not that long, but a while, like 8, 9 years, maybe 10 years, 10 years. There's usually an arc in a production where I'm like, okay, this is going to be good, or this is like interesting to me. I can explore this. It's worth the exploration. And then there's a point where I'm like, oh no, like this is the worst thing that's ever been made. I should throw it in the trash. And then I finish it anyway. That's the hardest part, like pushing through to the finish. And then I'm always happy that I finished it. And then the dread comes back when I have screenings. So,
is there something, I'm curious, and I'm curious about this for all creators generally, is there, because I think we've run into that thing before where you're you know, hip deep in this project and you realize, oh God, I've done everything wrong, everything is bad, and I'm a worthless human. Is there anything in particular that you find helps push you through that?
I'll answer, and then separating your ego if you can, and also I because of this, and I was like, is this a me problem or is this like a problem? Generally, I started like a film support group in New York, and we meet every 2 months. So you know, I know the meeting is coming. I know that I can hold myself accountable to the next meeting, and also I can be like, this is the worst thing I've ever made, and they can be like,
it's not the worst.
It's not the worst. Or they can be like, yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, maybe you should scrap this. Or this is, you are so in your head at this point, you can't even see it clearly. I do think at a certain point, you are not the best judge of what you're doing if you're that deep in it. So just having that group to you know, have eyeballs on it that aren't my own is super important.
No, it's a great resource. Do you guys have thoughts about the original question, which is about parts of the process that push you outside your comfort zone, or my question about getting through the doldrums, the dark part?
When I'm working on a film and I'm really into it, that is my comfort zone. So I don't know if I go outside of it at all. So no.
Well, that's fair. I mean, the process is where you go for your fulfillment, right? So,
yeah, and I just love doing it. I don't know if there's something wrong with me. Like I have too big of an ego. Like I think this is great. You know, it's like I hope people are gonna love this, but you know, I don't know.
I got a lot of envy for that.
To me, there's two aspects to that. You know, first of all, animation's hard. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you slice it. Animation's hard. But for me, there's two aspects of it. There's the technical side of animation, how you draw it, the process of physically making the imagery that you see on the screen. You got to figure all that out. It's you know, do I have the anatomy right? Am I compositing this right? All that kind of stuff. But then there's also, and this is the part that I lose myself in, but it's actually much harder, is the story side of it. And so for me, you know, Snow Bear is much more personal than it's not just about a polar bear, you know, losing a friend. It's a story of what I've went through in my life and losing someone that was close to me and watching them melt away literally and feeling lost and feeling adrift. And so all of it's metaphor. And so and then finding love again. And you know, so all of that is a representation of what I felt. So now what I'm doing when I'm making that film is I'm immersing myself and reliving a lot of that. So when you're animating that, you're putting yourself in those emotions again, and you'll cry and I'll laugh and I'll get angry, and all while I'm doing that and creating those shots. And so that, it's incredibly difficult, but it's also incredibly therapeutic and satisfying. And like I said, you lose yourself in that process, and time stops. Next thing you know, 8 hours have gone by and you feel like you just sat down, and that to me is that's the drug of creating animation.
And for me, this whole process was outside of my comfort zone. This is the first thing I've ever produced, so to speak. So like, I've always been tangentially involved in stuff and here and there, but I've never really been on like navigating film festivals, like learning all of that and how do you submit, and press, and dealing with composers and like all that stuff, was all new to me. Thankfully, this guy had experience and could help me through some of that, but we really tried to approach it as best we could, like a real production at a studio. That was kind of our thought, was like, because we do want it to be sort of a teaching tool as well. And so for me, the whole thing was outside my comfort zone, But I loved it.
Yeah.
I'm loving every second of it, including right now.
Woohoo! Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi guys, my name's Steven. Thank you for being here. My question is in response to seeing Snow Bear last night, but the same sentiment might apply to everybody. As far as 11 minutes is such a short time to like fall in love with characters, and by the end of the film, my wife and I were both sobbing. So yeah, thank you. Also, Aaron, thank you for signing my VHS copy of Brother Bear last night. I'm gonna cherish that forever. Thank you so much. But is there some sort of like secret sauce that goes into like timing emotional beats to where it can land the strongest? Because like I never felt like during the entirety of Snow Bear like okay, well, this is the part where I'm supposed to cry, this is the part where I'm supposed to feel this way. It just really felt concise. Is there any kind of like, was it like secret Disney magic that you learned over your career?
Well, for me, I'm a big believer. A lot of people think it's a formula, and for me, it's not a formula. I'm a big believer in story structure, and I don't care if I'm doing a 2-minute commercial that tells a story or if I'm doing an 84-minute feature film. Both of those, if you're telling a story, are going to have structure. You're going to have a first act. You're going to have an inciting incident. You're going to have all the journey that your character is going to go through, and then you're going to have a resolution at the end. And so I make sure that I'm hitting those structures. And so when I'm having an issue with story, if something's not working, I go back and I look at my structural template. I call it a template, not a crutch or a formula, because there's so much creativity within there. But what's great about having that structural template is that when you're having a problem and you look at it from a very analytical standpoint as far as structure goes, then you can start to pinpoint where those problems are and you can adjust. So that by the time you get things working in the right way, I always explain it like you're trying to put together a Rubik's Cube. You can get one side working right, and then you go and adjust another side, and you just messed up the side that you just got working right. And you'd have to keep working it, and get that structure working until all the sides match. And that's really the struggle in storytelling, right? Whether it's you're writing a novel or telling or creating a film, you're trying to bring the audience on this journey in a way that they don't feel like they're being pulled on a journey, that they're just riding this emotional roller coaster, and you've said something by the end of it.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Did anyone else want to? No? All right, it's okay. I do have a kind of a follow-up to Stephen's question for all of you. When you ideate a project, do you have an idea how long it's going to end up being? And then when you get to the end, do you find that you're more often on that target or farther from it? I guess it doesn't really work for Hunky Dory, but in general.
Yeah, for Hunky Dory, it's a 6-minute song, so it's a 6-minute film. But
not a lot of negotiation.
I've made other films where, those little numbers in the corner are really important to me, and I like to play with numbers until they feel right. So like the film I'm working on right now is an alphabet film, and it's so it's 26 chapters, and I decided, just because of playing with numbers, that each chapter was going to be 144 drawings, and then I'd double that number for the intro, and I'd double that number for the extra, and so it turned out to be exactly 4,320 drawings, which is exactly the same as Hunky Dory.
Right. Yeah,
it just worked out that way. And but then I made the decision to shoot on 3s instead of 2s, which means it's 8 drawings per second instead of 12. And the reason I made that switch is because I wanted my drawings. I keep putting more and more detail into them and more stuff, and I just want them to be on the screen a tiny bit longer so that the eye can appreciate them. So instead of a 6-minute film, it's going to be a 9-minute film.
I think usually when I come up with a film idea and I sort of try and get some sort of log line out, like this is going to be a film about blank, I usually have like a ballpark. I'm like, that sounds like a 3 to 6 minute long film, and then usually it ends up being somewhere within that range, but I don't really know until I've got some form of like animatic out there.
Right.
Like I'm working on a new film now, and I'm in pre-production, but pretty early.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's gonna be 15 minutes. Yeah, it's like I don't know. We'll see if it actually is, but it's sort of like a gut thing, and then it proves itself, right or wrong.
Before Aaron dives in on this, I just want to say he originally sold me this is going to be a 6 to 8 minute movie, and it's going to be real simple because it's about a polar bear in the Arctic. So it's going to be real easy.
Yeah, it's just mostly white, right? Just like a big white frame.
Yeah, we'll do it in 9 months, is what he said. But
yeah, I mean, I try to be. It grew, obviously. This one grew because we had the luxury of that. But I'm also, I come from a background we were very disciplined about. We were given a certain budget from the company I was working with, and our films were we always shot for 84 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how close you can get a film to specifically right to the minute when it's that long. So, I had a little bit of discipline in that, but I just let it grow because I wanted it to grow. So it went from that 6 minute to 11 minutes, and we just decided to keep it going.
As a film programmer, I love 84 minutes. It's amazing. If you guys are making features, 84 is like a perfect sweet spot.
It's the right number of turnovers in the theater, too.
Right. Next question, please.
Hi, my name's Jacob. I came in a little late, so if this was already a topic you guys talked about in the beginning, I'm sorry.
We'll have security throw you out.
Okay, you can just throw me out. As someone who went to school and graduated with a degree in traditional animation, I was met with a lot of people that were confused why I would be going into that field or want to do that when there's like 3D, and just the general consensus that this art form is dying. So I just wanted to have what you guys would say to refute that, and then also where do you guys see 2D hand-drawn going like 25 years from now? Where will it be?
I don't think it's dying. It's gone. It's different than it was in the 90s, but I'm a big. First of all, I always say hand-drawn's only going to go away if we let it go away. So if you want to be a hand-drawn traditional animator, then go do it, because there are still a lot of avenues to do that. And as far as being an independent filmmaker like us or many others out in the world, there's never been a better time to do it, from the point of view of the equipment that we have and the ability to get the work out and have the world see it with all the streaming possibilities and YouTube and all this great stuff. There's never been a better time, actually, I would argue, than now to be a hand-drawn animator, because the only thing stopping you from creating it is you. So if you want to go and animate it, go and animate it. And then now you have all kinds of opportunity to share it with the world, where, 25 years ago, we didn't have those opportunities or the means to make the films. So yeah, I argue it's the opposite. It's, this is the best time ever.
Yeah, I would just hear what he said. I mean, I think that everything's changed with technology, whether it be digital drawing or online distribution. And, I think, to be honest, I think because kids have grown up with CG for so long, I now think there's
like a
pendulum.
Taste for it. Yeah,
there's this pendulum swinging the other direction, where I think people are like, ooh, it's just something that there's, You could call it nostalgia, or you could just call it appreciation for an art form.
Right,
And
right.
at the end of the day, I think that's what it is. It's an art form. And it's like everybody thought photography was going to kill illustration.
Right,
and
right.
It didn't. It just became something different.
I do want to just add one more thing, just a little anecdote is, you know, I love to periodically do live streams where I sit at my old Disney desk and I grab from my stack of paper and I draw and animate traditionally, just to keep that alive and keep it out in the ether somewhere. And it's interesting that now that we've gone a generation since it was in the common psyche out there, how we did that. One of the number one questions I get when I'm sitting there flipping paper and animating is, why are you flipping the paper? And I was like, watch. And I'll flip back and forth. And they're like,
oh, wow.
You're a wizard. You know, you can see it come to life. You can see it move. So I love keeping that alive as well. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I don't think the magic of that will ever die.
I've been doing it 37 years and I still love it.
Even, you know, make a little piece of animation like yourself and you're still like surprised and just totally in awe over it. I think what I would say in response to the person who gave you that advice or you know, you were getting this feedback from is that like you're a director, right? You're like a film director first, maybe, if that's what you want to be. So like the tools that you want to choose are up to you. 2D animation, I don't think it's going anywhere. I totally agree with everything that these two have said. Like I think there's also this sort of pendulum swing. I think there's so many avenues for you to share your work that are beyond, you know, I don't know, just even beyond just film festivals, right? Like there are just so many spaces. I sort of wonder if this advice or this take is coming from an employment perspective more than anything else, to which I would say, I think it's short-sighted advice because I don't think it's necessarily true that 3D is the future. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that whole pendulum swing thing, but which means it might swing back the other way too. But looking towards the future, I agree that what we're doing is artwork, and I'm always looking for ways to get my animated work seen that's alternative, because I want to get it in front of eyes that like in museums on a wall. Like people see paintings and sculptures, I want them to see my animation there too. And so when I look towards the future, I hope that that's kind of the way that the 2D hand-drawn animation is going.
Thank you, Jacob. I want to kind of spin off a question real fast from that. You know, this is a form of art that you know, certainly hasn't gone away, but is not being promoted the same as 3D art has been. So I'm just curious, in all of your lives, was there, and there needn't be, but was there a particular piece of animation that you saw early on that made you realize, oh, I want to do that. I want to create that kind of thing?
This one's easy for me. Lion King.
Lion King. Okay. No, yeah, that's good.
I would say the works of Norman McLaren.
Okay. I do not know the name, but I will Google that.
I think I said this already. I think for me it would be Caroline Leaf, but her sand animation films, but also these painting on glass films that are just unbelievable. I think I just could not believe it, and you know that's 2D animation as well. So. Right.
For me, I'm obviously, just like everyone else, I grew up loving Disney films, and I think the first film I remember seeing in the theater was Robin Hood with my grandfather.
That's a fun one.
And The Rescuers and all of that. And I loved Warner Brothers so much. I loved all the Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner and all that kind of stuff, and Daffy Duck, and I just loved it. But then, you know, me sitting in Glenn Keane's office and him explaining to me the possible, you know, me having this illustration background and then sitting in this animation god's office and him telling me the possibilities of taking, yes, you can draw, but now you can also act and you can add music and you can do all of these things that come together in one art form. That's where I really got hooked and said, well, I want to do this forever now.
That's awesome. Oh, thank you, Jacob, wherever you went.
My name is Stone. I also came in late with Jacob, so hopefully you didn't answer my question. And Jacob asked me, he asked what my question was going to be, and I said, no way it's going to be close to yours, but actually it's a pretty good follow-up question. I agree with you guys saying that I think there's a switch we're seeing right now in terms of what people are wanting out of animation, what is becoming popular again. I think we're seeing that with the 3 recent Best Picture winners for animation. It's been, I think, 2022 is Encanto the last time. I know Flow was animated digitally, but a little bit different anyways. But is there a project within I think the 2010s, we saw a lot of mainstream, always CG animation. But towards the end of the 2010s, the beginning of the 2020s, is there a project that you as hand-drawn animators saw and got really excited about the reception of it and what it could mean for the future of your career? And also, is there a project, you guys have mentioned animators that are coming out with projects to look out for. And obviously, this is indie animation, so I respect you guys for talking about, smaller projects, of course, what you guys do as well. But is there any mainstream movie or film coming out that you're excited about, the reception that it could mean for audience members and yourselves as well? Because I do believe that we're literally on the verge of maybe a 2D animation movie making a lot of money, and I know it's not all about money, but that's a stepping stone for people to really get into this craft, and that makes me really excited.
Just going back to your point, the Lion King in '94 changed everything, right? It just created this giant upward trajectory. So I think you're saying is there one coming along? It's hard to say. I mean, obviously, I mentioned Sergio Pablos earlier in his movie Klaus on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the most beautifully. Aaron always says it's one of the most beautiful films since Snow White. I mean, in terms of
Sleeping Beauty, yeah, and he did it for a budget, a fraction of what the big studios are doing. So that's incredible to me. And anything Cartoon Saloon is doing with Tom Moore and the rest of the gang over there, they're the ones that did the Wolfwalkers and Secret of the Kells and Song of the Sea. There's plenty of hand-drawn stuff that's being done currently that you just be on the lookout for it. As soon as you can convince a studio that you can create something that's going to be successful and be, they don't care about the process. They really don't. They want to make something that's going to go out and make some money. Yeah. So all it takes, like you said, it's going to take one hand-drawn film to go out there, and they're going to say, "Oh, that's what everybody wants again," and then we'll see a big shift. But even until we get there, there's plenty of hand-drawn stuff that's getting made, and like you mentioned, Flow is even for hand-drawn people. Flow really paved the way. When you see a film like Flow that was as successful as it was critically, for $4.5 million up against $200 and $250 million budgets, that's where executives go, And so that's a big plus for us as filmmakers for a budget.
Yeah, totally agree. I mean, Flow made with Blender, free software. It's totally amazing. I think it's a win for independent animation. I think I would want to shout out a project that I worked on in 2021. I was directed by Sara Gunnarsdottir, who's an Icelandic independent animator. We went to school together, and we worked. I think it was a crew of 5 people on a film content warning. It's called My Year of Dicks.
Oh my God, I love that movie.
Okay, this was initially going to be a TV show on FX, and the show that it was going to be a part of got canceled, and so it was re-edited into a film of different chapters, and it got nominated for an Oscar in 2023, and we all went to the Oscars with it, and there was just something extremely delightful about having this very tiny crew of independent animators who all know each other. It felt like this weird little homecoming, but at the Oscars. It really excited me. And then having Flow win an Oscar this year was pretty exciting. But Sara Gunnarsdottir since then has started a production company. So I think she's working on really interesting stuff right now. So I would definitely check her out.
It's also really satisfying to see somebody up there in a Oscar suit, the black tie, having to say "My Year of Dicks" to a crowd full of lavishly, expensively dressed people. Steven, do you have anything that you want to throw in? It's okay. No, it's all good. Thank you so much.
Nick, I wanted to thank you because I didn't know that Sergio Paulo was working on the Ember film. I said when you said that automatic, because I figured Klaus was a huge movie that maybe jump started. A lot of that is 2D animated, and it's still. I've talked about it a lot. I do social media sometimes, and a lot of people love that movie, and it's really interesting because it's like a 2D animated film that recently came out that it's a holiday film, so people keep on watching it all the time,
Yes.
especially because it's on Netflix too. So I think that's such a valuable thing to have.
It's a big score.
Actually, one of those, the one things that always irritates me about Netflix, is they should beat the drum on that movie every Christmas like it's Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I mean, it should be everywhere, and they don't really do it. I guess it has to do with because it's the algorithm, right? And it's just that's the weird thing about all of that now. That side of the industry, I do not understand at all. But he's a great filmmaker. I mean, obviously, and who knows where the future of 2D animation is going to go? But I'm just excited that, I mean, some of the films we saw last night, I was like, oh, that's awesome, that's amazing. That I mean, the La Charade one with the stop motion was another thing that I just love, and it's just amazing to me that the future of animation, hand drawn, stop motion, I think is actually really bright.
Glad to hear that, because we're big fans of animation here at Florida. Hello there.
Yes, thank you so much for this panel. It's very, very informative. I'm here with our film at this festival, and we are running around, and we couldn't get a chance to watch the animation screenings, and I was wondering where can I watch the films after this festival?
Well, we have another screening of the animations, right? Is Matthew or Tim around? I don't have my calendar.
Regal Cinema Friday night, 8:45 p.m.
Obviously, these guys are going to know. Yeah, Regal Cinema is Friday at 8:45. I just remembered that myself.
Yes, and unfortunately, I'm flying out tomorrow, midday, so...
That's your last chance.
Yeah.
That's it. It's all over.
We're actually deleting the files.
So I'm gonna encourage you to chat individually with the filmmakers after this panel's over and exchange some information, perhaps. But I do, if you don't mind, I wanna piggyback on that question. Say, all right, for everybody here in the audience who has enjoyed listening to you or enjoyed watching your work, where can we all follow you and your projects that you have coming up? And we can just go down the line here.
StephenVandermeer.com. All my old films are there. You can watch them. If you want my postcard, hit me up in the lobby or a button or anything. Yeah.
Awesome. And he spells Steven the bad way with a V, not the right way with a PH. So.
AmandaBonaiuto.com. You can just photograph my name if you want to find me. I'm also pretty active on Instagram, so you can find me there too.
Yeah, and follow Aaron on YouTube, Aaron Blaise Art. That's probably the biggest place to follow us. Instagram, all of the socials are Aaron Blaise Art. As the producer, I'm just plugging this.
You're
guy.
just plugging.
Yeah, and having the education hub that we have, one of the things we wanted to do, knowing that we're not a big studio, we're little independent people now. We wanted to figure out how we could get an audience for. It's hard to get a short out there and get it seen. And so we decided early on when we started making it that we would live stream the making of it.
Oh, nice.
And so twice a week, people that were members to our site could, every Tuesday and Thursday, they could tune in, and I might be making a background, or I might be animating a shot or doing effects or whatever, and they could sit and watch, and we did that for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and we've got over 400 hours now. Actually, I'm going to back up, though, because we have the education site. Originally, we said, hey, let's create a course on how to create your own animated short. We was like, oh, yeah. We got to make an animated short. So that's how that came out. So we recorded 400 hours of it.
Wow.
But one of the other things, once again, going into not really knowing how to monetize, if you want to call it that, shorts, we've come up with the animation roadshow that we're going to be doing, and we're doing it throughout Europe and the United States, where it's kind of a celebration of hand-drawn animation with Snow Bear as our focal point. It's an hour-and-a-half show where we rent a theater and we go in and sell tickets, and we talk about what it's a whole 2-hour or 90-minute experience that we're doing. So there's that as well.
Fantastic. People can find the details on that by
CreatureArtTeacher.com.
CreatureArtTeacher.com.
Yeah.
CreatureArtTeacher.com. That sounds fantastic. Well, it looks like I think we're good. Anybody have any last minute questions? Oh, yep. You gotta. We'll wait for you. No, I'm sorry. You're fine. I'm just being a jerk.
So hi, I'm Britt, and just like everyone else, thank you guys for being here. Yeah. My one question I was wondering was, I don't know if it's a chicken or egg kind of situation, but obviously passion drives a lot of these projects. So do you guys ever say, like, I want to tell this story first, and then you pair it with one of your interests? Like, say, like, if you want polar bear conservation, to say that pairs well. Or do you guys find more of those passions where it's like, I want to do a film, let's say, like for Flow, that centers around a cat, and then you build your story from there? So like I said, I didn't know if it was like a chicken or egg of, do you guys find your almost plot first and then how you want to drive that, if that makes sense?
That's a good one. I like for Hunky Dory, I found that song and I knew I wanted to animate to it, but I had no idea what imagery was going to go down. So I just kind of looked into my vault of little notes that I take over the years, and when I get little ideas, and I get most of my ideas while I'm animating, so I'll just jot them down and I'll keep them, and then I'll go back into that list and look for something that kind of feels right for the song that I'm animating to. And a lot of times it's 2 or 3 different ideas that kind of glom together and form something brand new. It's like more than all of them combined kind of thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with Confetti, I had the idea that I wanted to make a film about a particular type of like grief, like relationship grief, but I didn't want to tell a direct story. So as I was making all those drawings at the beginning of the process, I started drawing like snails and like all this other weird stuff, and they sort of became like motifs of the film and like a way to drive it forward without being super direct about a specific experience.
Yeah, for me, it can come from anywhere. It can be anything. With Snow Bear, we knew we wanted to make a film. We wanted to create this course I was talking about. So I wanted a simple background, like Nick was saying earlier. I wanted a simple environment and one character. Oh, a polar bear in the Arctic. That's simple. Turned out it wasn't. But and I thought, you know, and all my ideas, for whatever reason, they either come to me at about 4 o'clock in the morning when I'm half awake, half asleep, or when I'm washing my hair in the shower. And so that's where it came to me, was taking a shower.
That's why I don't get any ideas.
Yeah, yeah, and yeah, exactly. And so the premise of this lonely polar bear living in the Arctic that makes a snow bear to keep him company, that's what came up. That's where I came up with the idea, and then I pitched it to Nick, and it grew from there. But like I said, it can come from anywhere. When we did Brother Bear, it was Chuck Williams, who was our producer, and myself sitting talking about different things that had an emotional resonance with us. We talked about songs. We talked about personal experiences. And one of the things that came up was Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle song. And this idea, which was a tragic, wonderful song about a father that doesn't have enough time for his son, and he's living the grief of that. And that grew into a story about a father who didn't raise his son the right way, which was the first iteration of Brother Bear.
Oh,
and
wow,
that, and then that evolved into the story that ended up in the theaters. Yeah. But it came from Harry Chapin's Cats in the Cradle.
Excellent. Great question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
I just would reiterate on that. One of the things I think people don't realize is, I think, and this is something I've learned from Aaron, you can practice inspiration. Like, if you really focus on trying to get ideas and get, sometimes they just come out of the blue and you can't control it. But I encourage people to take some time and sit down and think, well, what story do I want to tell, or what, you know, and you'd be surprised at how that stuff can kind of lead you places if you really just dedicate yourself to it. I think so many people just go through life and just hope to get struck with the idea, and I think you need to block out time to actually sit down.
Yeah, because I wanted just real quick, you know, when I was talking about, we just wanted to make this polar bear that makes a snow bear as a friend. Once we landed on that, then I started looking at it, how do I make it personal to me? And I started identifying those emotions that I've gone through, and then it became really personal and really, now once I had that attachment to it, then it became real, and I could do something with it.
I want to testify a little bit about something, Nick, you and Aaron just said in your answers there. I had joked about the washing the hair thing, but I do actually get a lot of ideas in the shower, and I think a lot of people do that too. They get their ideas in the shower, and I think one of the reasons we get those ideas in the shower is that we live in a world where we don't allow ourselves, like Nick was saying, to just sit and think. You know, we have phones on our pockets at all times. We're connected to the entire globe. And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. It's a different conversation. But I do very much feel what you said, Nick, about just if you want to be, and not just being a creative person, but just like be a fully formed human being. I think it's a fantastic idea to give yourself specific time just to kind of sit, or maybe take a walk or something. Just be alone with your thoughts. I think that's a fantastic piece of advice. Thank you for saying that.
How many times you've been driving somewhere and you get from point A to point B and you don't remember how you got there?
Yeah, it's like we go through autopilot, like, and you know, don't get me started on scrolling, but yeah, no, absolutely, it's scary. You realize.
Yeah, well, but that's because I get a lot of ideas in the car too, especially on a trip, and all of a sudden I'm just immersed in a story that's playing out in my head, and you forget the entire journey, and you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? You know?
Yeah, the shower, driving, and I think walking alone. Yeah. I went to a film festival where I stayed three miles from the theater, and I didn't have a rent-a-car, so I walked an hour every morning to the festival, and a whole film came out of that.
Yeah.
Walking for me, for sure.
Yeah,
like
I
I get away from the computer, I leave my phone on my desk, and I go for walks. And it can be anything. It can be a story idea. Mm-hmm. It can be how to solve a problem on something that I'm stuck on. It can be all kinds of stuff. But
my wife Vedanta and I take nightly rides into Wekiva's Park, and
nice.
we ride the trails, and all kinds of ideas come out of that.
But I think it's the practicing the intent, the setting the time aside, or whatever you want to call it.
This is going to be
intentional.
A period that I give to my brain. Right.
And then half the time when you try to control it, it doesn't work, and then it
right. And if you're a resident here in Florida, and you don't mind getting a little sweaty and maybe getting a couple bug bites, there are a lot of great places to walk around out here. Yeah. So I am a big fan of that approach. Awesome. Well, please join me in thanking our filmmakers for participating in the panel. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And thank you to all of you guys out here in the audience. I hope you'll stick around. I hope you'll watch some of our movies. The animated panel is playing again. I totally remember what he said. Friday at 8:45 at the Regal. But we also have, it's only 12:30 right now. We have basically 4 solid days left of movies in this festival. So please watch some. Please meet some filmmakers. Please tip your servers and thank the volunteers. And have a great festival.
Thank you.
You can take those with you if you want. Oh, you're doing. Never mind. That's not. Thank you so much, everybody.